Is everybody in? Can you turn it up a little bit? Woo! Alrighty then. Who's hot? Okay, let's say it. Good afternoon, Cyprus! Come on, excuse me. It's been 2.5 years since the planning of the Mediterranean Bar Show. I need more light from you guys. We've been zooming for far too long. This is a real, in-person, I'm actually real. You could touch me, but I'll have to charge you. So, I want to hear a bit more action. Good afternoon, Cyprus! Yes, that's real life. And this is presenting. So in a minute, I'm going to present this wonderful gentleman over here on a topic that's fascinating, the conversation with the cast, the woods, the elements of the wrestling, but I'm going to leave it to the experts. So ladies and gentlemen, can I please ask you to be upstanding? You gotta stand up, you gotta give the speaker some credit. Not yet, that's like me later. That's far too early, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please hear a huge round of applause from Vincent Ballu. So here!
Thank you so much, Kenji. So first of all, thank you everyone for coming today. Looking at the weather, I wouldn't have done like you guys. I would have gone straight to the beach and not coming into a very, very hot place to drink spirits and listen to a very, very technical speech. So thank you very much for being here. Please don't leave to the beach. It's only 40 minutes, so please stay with us 40 minutes. I'm sure you will learn great things. You will taste also great drums and cognac. So I hope it's going to be cool for you guys. So thank you also to the organizers of the bar show for taking me here. It's great to finally see this achievement of putting together a bar show in this tiny island of Cyprus. It's like unexpected and it's amazing to prepare, so thank you guys. So today, the idea, I know that we have a lot of bartenders here, professionals, but also consumers that are just here or to drink at a very low price good cocktails, or to learn about spirits, but maybe they don't know a lot. So we're going to try to do this balance between being very, very technical for the professionals and being accessible for the consumers. So we're going to try to be on this line. So today, what's the idea? We're going to talk about the art of aging at Maison Ferrand. That's a bit of a snobbish title, but you know, I'm French, so we always need to brag a bit. We need to maintain this reputation. So, and excuse my accent in advance. So what's the idea? The idea is that we're going to try and understand why does everybody, first of all, why do we put our distillates into a vessel for aging? Why? Because a lot of people do that. I mean, a lot of drinks are made with aged spirits, but people don't really think of why in the first place people did that. So that's what we're going to look at, and we're going to look at all the ways possible to age a spirit. Because right now we are living in a world that's pretty much standardized. I mean, we've got pretty much all the same shoes. I think out of 10 people we've got all these white, either Nike or Adidas, but it's pretty much the same. Everybody is dressing the same, everybody is eating the same thing, drinking the same thing, and the producers are also following the same trends, and our spirits industry is not different in that case, and especially when we're talking about aging. Most of the spirit producers are doing pretty much the same thing in terms of aging. Why? Because they did that for many, many years, and sometimes they're not even asking themselves the questions of why they are doing it. So we're going to dig into that. We're not a big audience, so at the end we can do a little Q&A and you can ask the questions if you have questions on any points. And I suppose there is someone presenting after me, so I will be at the Plantation booth in the other hall if you've got more technical answers, or if you want to take time with me, I'd be very, very happy. So let's go. So the question we're asking ourselves today is, how does aging influences the taste of a spirit? And that's in many, many ways. It's not just what we would find naturally. It's okay, we're getting the taste of the wood, the spirit. It's like making an infusion or a tea, we're getting this taste into the spirit. But it's much more complex than that, because a lot of different elements are going to enter in this process of aging, depending on the climate, depending on the type of vessel you're using for aging your spirit, the species, the essence of wood you're going to use, everything, all these factors are going to influence the taste of your final spirit. And that's a lot of, it's like a painter with a lot of different colors that you can use to create the best possible painting. So first of all, we need to go back a little bit and understand when we are tasting a spirit, what do we taste exactly? So this is really schematized, but basically we can taste three different big families of aromas. There's a fourth, we're going to talk about it. But there are the primary aromas that are coming directly from the raw material. So when we're speaking of whiskey, like a bourbon, for instance, that is made with corn, there are some aromas that are coming directly from the grain, from the corn. When we talk about rum, like today, like this one from Barbados, for instance, we are talking of the taste of the sugarcane, the fresh sugarcane. So mostly it's when we are talking about agricole rums that are made out of fresh sugarcane juice. So you're getting this drastic character from the sugarcane, really the taste of the true sugarcane. Then, really important family, and we don't know a lot about it also, and we don't talk a lot about it, is the aromas that we call secondary, that are coming from the fermentation. So what's a fermentation? Basically is the process of turning sugar. So you've got a sweet liquid, a sugary liquid, and you turn it into an alcoholic liquid through the action of the yeast. During this phase, it's not only turning your sugar into alcohol, it's also developing all the elements, a lot of elements or flavors that are going to be in your final product. So that's a very, very key phase. And then that's what we're going to talk about today, is the tertiary aromas that are coming from the aging. So elements, taste of wood, the tannins, elements that develop during this period of resting of aging. Then there's a fourth category that are elements that can be added after the making of the spirit. Then we can talk about spice rum, for instance, where you add spices after the aging, stuff like that. But that's not really what's inside the spirit. It's like other added flavors. Okay, so now that we know that, we're going to look at the aging. So the spirit making, we talked about the three big steps. First of all, you've got your raw material, you're going to ferment it or macerate it in a spirit, then you do the distillation, then you do the aging. And aging, distillation is really a mechanical process. You distill, to become a master distiller, you can learn on how to make an alembic or a pot still or a column still work. Like in 2 weeks, it's really, really easy to do. Fermentation, maceration, it's a more complex process because we're talking about the action of yeast, so it's living organism. So there are a lot of elements that can influence this phase. So this is a very interesting phase, but we're not going to talk about it today. And then there's the aging. And actually, the spirits world in general, there's not really a lot of writing, like scientific, technical writing about the making of the spirits. We are quite a young industry. The interest like we have now around spirits is quite new. So not a lot of scientists, of chemists have studied really in depth the aging. So we don't know a lot about it. And what you need always to think when we talk about aging in barrel is that, again, we are talking about a living organism. A tree is like, it's a plant, so one tree and another tree is not the same. So if you cut your tree to make this tree to make a barrel or this tree, it's going to make a completely different product. Maybe not completely, there's going to be some similarities if you use the same species, if the tree is coming from the same forest, but one tree and another tree at 1 meter of difference can be different. And that's very important to understand when we talk about aging. So, very fast, we're going to talk about when using the barrel, what do we want to achieve? What elements do we want to extract of the barrel? What is going to be the impact on the taste of a product? So first of all, that's what we're all thinking about when we think of aging, that are really the taste of the wood. So what's the taste of the wood? It's the primary, so really the taste of wood, and then what is coming from the toasting. I think we've got a picture here. This is a toasting. When you're assembling a barrel, the different elements of the barrel, you always toast it, so you put it up on the flame, and you can choose if this flame is very strong, you can choose the duration of this toasting, and this is going to influence the impact of the barrel on the spirit. That's a very important step. Then we've got some sugars. It's not sugars that you add, it's sugars that are naturally present on the wood. And even if you don't add sugars, you don't do dosage on the spirit, there will be some sugars entering in the spirit. Then another important element are the tannins. If you know about wine, you know about the tannins. It's what gives some structure, some astringency to the spirit or to the wine. And this is coming also from the wood. Then another important element, when we think, for instance, of the whiskey industry, something very popular at the moment is the finishing. What is the finishing? Is the use of a barrel that previously has served for another spirit or another wine, especially in the whiskey industry. They're using a lot of sherry barrels, so that were used to make sherry. And this is going to have an impact because your barrel is working like a sponge. It's going to absorb some of the previous feeling and then give it back to the spirit that you're waiting inside of it. Then there is also a very important element during time, it's a micro-oxidation of the spirit inside the barrel. So why do we use an oak barrel? Because it's porous. So there are contact between the oxygen outside the barrel and what's inside the barrel. And these exchanges make an impact on the taste of your spirits. This also allows a complexification of some aromas chemically with this oxidation. The tannins are evolving during time, and that's more technical, but we've got also transformation in terms of molecules that you have in the spirit. And also, a vessel can be used to assemble different spirits that we call marriage. If you've got two different rums that you want to blend, you put it in a vessel, in a barrel, and if they're resting in time, it's like a remarriage in time to assemble two different elements. It's exactly the same time, that's what we call also a form. So that's why. I know when I think in general about the spirits industry, we realize, I don't know if you go to a rum producer, for instance, we're going to talk about rum today, what kind of barrels are they using? It's always, almost always, oak barrels. At first, so almost everybody in the spirits industry is using oak, and then they're using bourbon barrels. Why are they using bourbons? There are a lot of reasons, but like in a lot of different sectors and industries, the first reason is always the price, the cost. Because a bourbon barrel like this one is a 200 liters barrel, and it costs around $180, $200. So pretty much if you calculate the price per liter, it's not very good at math, right? 200 liters, $200 more or less, so it's $1 per liter. Just to give you a comparison, in cognac, so we are a cognac-based company. To buy a barrel of cognac, it's bigger barrels, it's 350 liters, and it's around 800 euros. So more than 2 euros per liter. And most of the time, bourbon is the cheapest option. So everybody is using this kind of barrel, bourbon American. So that's one of the reasons. And why is it so cheap? Because the bourbon industry is very, very big. They're producing around 150 million liters every year. So 600,000 barrels of bourbon are sold every year. Because in the bourbon industry, you can use your barrel only new barrels. So when they use it, they need to resell it, and it's very cheap for the other producers. So that's some reasons why the general industry, 99% of the industry is using the same kind of barrels. Is it a fatality? Absolutely not. Actually, when you look at the past, people were being way more creative for many different reasons, and they were using a lot of different kind of vessels. That's what we're going to look at today. So that's a bit the organization of the presentation. We're going to go into all the elements that can influence the aging of a spirit. So first of all, we're going to look at the type of food, the size and the age of the barrel, the toasting, I talked about it, very important process. Then the cooperage, one cooperage, so one barrel maker will have its own style, another one the other. The previous feeling, the influence of the climate, and then we're going to look also at other types of aging, because we've been talking only about wood, but actually you can use a lot of different materials to use your spirit, not only wood. And actually, we see in the wine industry, for instance, more and more, people are using clay, are using amphoras, are using concrete to raise a wine. It's not only barrels. And in the spirit industry, it almost doesn't exist. So first of all, like 99% of the industry is using oak barrels to age their spirits. Why? Because oak is very resistant. You can use it a lot of times. It's very, very solid. So you don't have to buy another cask every year. Then it is porous, so it allows the aging, the micro-oxidation, but it's not too porous. That's to say, the angel share, what evaporates every year, is not too high, so you don't lose all the spirit when you age your spirit. And also know there's big industries that have been developed around wood that make scale economy, so the old barrels are simply cheaper than the other wood. But if you think about, I don't know, 200 years ago, people wouldn't go, I don't know if there's a lot of oak trees in Cyprus, or big oak trees, I'm not sure. But yes, there are, okay. But imagine, for instance, the Caribbean, or where we come from, Cognac, for instance. There's not that many oak trees. So imagine someone 200 years ago, why would you go and make like 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers to cut an oak tree, make your barrel, and then come back home and age your spirit in it? That just doesn't make sense. If you need to go with your horse, it's 200 kilometers is quite long. So people were just going to the garden, to the nearest forest, cutting the tree that was in that forest, and making a barrel out of it, which was logical. And they were using a bigger, a wider variety of trees. They were using acacia, they were using chestnut, they were using mulberry, white cherry, whatever. And actually, all these woods are still valid to make spirits. So what we do is a lot of researching around these woods. And every kind of wood, for instance, here you have something that is it's a round, so it's similar round than this one, but aged in a white cherry tree. You see already the color makes a big difference, and in terms of taste, it's also very, very different. So why using only the same variety? So we're going to look a little bit into it. In the spirits industry, most of the spirits are aged either in American or French oak, basically, it's mostly oak, and each kind of barrel is going to have a different impact on the final taste. So the American oak, it's Quercus alba is the Latin name. I don't know much Latin, but I know the names of the trees, which is not very useful in a normal conversation, but still. Quercus alba, what are the characteristics? It got naturally a lot of vanillin components, a lot of also lactones. So like cocoa lactone is the elements that are going to give the vanilla note, pastry note, the cocoa note. So that's why when you're drinking a bourbon which is aged in American oak, new American oak, you're getting all these pastry notes. And that's why also in the rums you can find these same elements, because most of the rum producers they use these similar varieties. French oak is a bit different. You're going to have more tannins, you're going to have more spiciness, and in France we have two different varieties. The pedunculate, Quercus robur, that is a bit more expensive. It's going to be with a lot of tannins, getting a lot of structure, and then you've got the Quercus petrae, which is the sessilol, and it's going to give some more spicy notes. And you can play between one or the others. For instance, this one, the IXO, what we do is double aging. First aging is in bourbon barrels, so American oak, so you're getting all these pastry notes, and then it's French oak, and it's pedunculate oak, so you're getting more structure. So that allows to get a balance between the two influences. This is a bit to explain what could be the difference between the American and the French oak, and between here pedunculate and sessile. So also another element that differs, it's the same species of tree, so we're talking about oak, but you can see it's very, very different trees, depending on how they're planted and how they're growing. And this has an impact also on the aging in another way, which is the wideness of the grain, so the porosity of your barrel. Because as I said, why does the spirit age in a barrel? Because it's porous. There are exchanges between the air and between what's inside of the barrel. And depending on how porous is this barrel, these exchanges are going to be faster or not. The evaporation inside the cask will be faster or not. And here is a very simple way to understand how it can be different. This tree, which is growing alone in its garden, doesn't have any competition. It can grow very wide. And the tree is growing wide, so what happens with the pores of the barrel and of the tree, they are getting wider too. So generally speaking, if you're working with a pedunculate or with an American oak, you're going to have a barrel with bigger porosity because it's growing wider. If you got a tree growing here, planted with a lot of trees in the same area, they're going to grow higher, upper, and the grain is going to be smaller, it's going to be thinner, so you won't have the same porosity. So that's also a way to play with your spirits. You can age in this kind of oak tree or in another kind. But why only oak? As I said, almost everybody is using oak, but you can use a wide variety of trees. I don't know what's the most planted tree here in Cyprus, but probably we can do something amazing with it. We just need to experiment. So that will be the first tasting that we're going to have today. So don't mind me if during my speech at some point I said blue elephant. That's a code we invited to make the tastings come in a very discreet way. So as I thought blue elephant would be a random word I would say during my tasting, I will say it again, blue elephant, okay? That's okay, it's started. So we're going to study two trees that are very, very typical of Western continental Europe, that are chestnuts and acacia. Here you have acacia. Acacia is a very interesting tree and a very interesting wood to use in barrel because you don't get that much tannins. So you don't get this harshness, this astringency that you could have with oak, and you're getting a lot of honey-like flavors. That's why acacia is widely used in some regions of Spain, of Portugal, to age white wine. Because when you have a white wine, you don't want something too heavy, you don't want something too harsh with too many tannins. So acacia is very interesting for it. So the first one you are tasting here is not acacia, it is chestnut. So here you are tasting something that is completely experimental, as most of you are gonna taste today. At Maison Ferrand we have a big R&D department with a guy who is a PhD in chemistry, so he studied really chemistry for 8 years. Some people do that actually. And he studied the aging of wine from Burgundy. So he's really into these kind of things. And we're conducting a study. I don't know if you see well the picture on the background, but you've got 3 ranks of barrels. Here on the bottom it's acacia cask, in the middle it's chestnut cask, and on top it's white cherry cask. What did we do? We took the same rum from Barbados, so what you're tasting is the rum from Barbados from 2018, and we aged it in the different barrels, in the different casks, to observe what could be the difference if we did age in this species of tree or another. So the first one you're getting is chestnut. What's the specificity, the main character of chestnut? That is quite similar to American oak in the sense that it has a lot of vanilla cocoa lactose. So you're getting the pastry out. Also, it's a wood that is heavily sweet. You've got a lot of sugars coming from the wood. So that's very interesting to age, for instance, a cognac or a rum, because you're getting all this smoothness, all this roundness naturally. So it's also a widely planted tree around cognac. So you may ask yourself, so why, if it was so good, and actually we've got proof, we found documents, invoices from our companies, so Maison Ferrand, Cognac Ferrand, invoices from the end of the 19th century of barrels of chestnut. So we were actually buying barrels of chestnut at the end of the 19th century. But then it's called why? I think the main reason, again, if you remember what's the main reason of all things in the world, I said it at the beginning. It's prices, it's a cost, it's money. Because when you use a chestnut barrel, the angel shell, the evaporation, it is a very, very porous tree. So when we will have in cognac with a normal oak barrel around 1.5 to 2% evaporation of the liquid every year, with a chestnut barrel we're getting 6-7%. So imagine, again, this bourbon barrel is 200 liters. If you're losing 7% every year, that means every year you're losing 14 liters of the spirit. So when you've got a beautiful rum from Barbados and you see it evaporating 14 liters every week, you want to go to the barrel and to stop it from evaporating. So that's why not a lot of people are using chestnut, and also you couldn't use chestnut for a very, very long aging, because also if it's very porous, it oxidizes very fast, it concentrates a lot, and it extracts a lot from the barrels, because the exchanges between the air and what's inside are very, very intense. So you're going to get a lot of very intense woody flavors, too much. That's why that's a kind of barrel we use mostly for small maturations, like 1 year, 6 months. Now, I think, yeah, the second blue elephant is here. Make some room for it. That's the acacia. So we're going on the right side. So you saw the chestnut, the sweetness is very intense. Vanilla coconut, it gives a lot of color. I don't know if you looked into your glass. That's a young rum. It was 2018. Normally it should be light, it should be pretty much this color. But as chestnut gives a lot of color, it gets this very, very intensity of color. Again, you're getting also some notes of pastry, of vanilla, vanilla, a bit more spiciness, but you don't get that much sugar. It's going to be fresher, you're going to feel a bit more of the alcohol, it's going to be very different. Again, you need to keep in mind that we're talking about the exact same rum aged in a different vessel. So it's the same rum, the only thing that differs is the kind of tree we use, the kind of cask we use. So chestnut versus acacia. Here, I don't know if you see the color of what's inside your glass. It's again the exact same rum, but aged in a white cherry tree. If you want to taste it, I've got only 10 here that I took from a barrel before leaving, so you can come to the booth, but it will be first in, first served. And we didn't taste it today for 2 reasons. First reason is that we need to taste 5 rounds, and I've got only 5 minutes really. Okay, I'm dead. And the second reason is that it's very bad. So experimenting sometimes is nice, but sometimes it can be very bad too. For instance, with white sherry, this one, you're getting a lot of resinous taste. It's like licking a pine tree. It's very, very bad. So I didn't want you to taste something that that's bad. So we're gonna do in 5 minutes half of the presentation. Third tasting, third blue elephant. It's not only continental wood that we can use. We were talking about the Caribbean. I don't know if you saw a lot of countries. If some of you guys traveled to the Caribbean, anyone has been to the Caribbean before? Yeah? Did you see a lot of oak trees? No. Yeah, not many oak trees in the Caribbean. And everybody is aging even for people that are not from the industry. If you age the rum in like a 55 hectoliters, so it's 55,000 liters vessel, you won't have the same influence, the same impact on the wood than if you use a 40-liter cask like that. This, by the way, is juniper cask. So the juniper tree we use and we are aging gin inside. So the more of the spirit you have in contact with the wood, the more influence of the wood you will have. Then another thing very important is the age of the barrel. So if you use a new old barrel that has not done the sponge effect yet, it has a lot to give to the final product. So you have a lot of impact on the barrel. If you use like the barrel right, a very, very old barrel, it will be like it's not adding much more to your final spirit. And at some point, it doesn't give anything more. Because even the porosity doesn't exist. Because you've got a lot of degradation from the wood that is getting into the pores, so it's like getting completely not porous. Third element. So we talked about barrel toasting. The toasting is very, very important because you can give a completely different vibe to your barrel depending on the toasting that you do. So you can go from a very light toasting, it's almost going to untouch the wood, so you're going to still have the natural taste of the wood, all the tannins, everything that makes this woody taste. And then the more you char it, the more you burn it, you're going to extract more sugars, more smoke, and more spiciness. Also, when you do that, it allows you to filter a little bit the spirit. If we speak again about the bourbon industry, do you guys know what kind of charring, what kind of toasting they use in the bourbon industry? It would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Who thinks 1, 2, 3, 4? Okay. Not a lot of brave people. Some people don't think anything. But I saw some hands raised between this one and this one, and that's right. Most of the time, this kind of toasting or this kind of toasting is very, very heavily toasted. Why? Because they want to extract a lot of sugars, and also because when you're charring it, charring is like burning at a very high temperature for very long, and you're creating some charcoal in your barrel. Why is it interesting? Because the charcoal acts like a filter. You must realize that just one molecule of charcoal is like a net of, if you take it and it's like rolled in itself, it's 1 meter, 1 square meter, 1 molecule of charcoal. It's just rolled into it, the molecule. So actually it works very well as a net to capture the impurities of the spirit. So why do they use it in the bourbon industry? Because I don't know if you tasted corn whiskey just out of the Alambic. It's full of impurities. It's sometimes not very good, and it's full of many elements that you don't want. So if you put it in a barrel like that with a lot of charcoal, you will filter your corn whiskey, and it will make it more smooth or easy to taste. So that's something. That's a reason why they use it in the bourbon industry. Then the fourth element. The cooperage typicity. We're going to go very fast on it because it depends on which barrel maker you want to work with. But for instance, us at Maison Ferrand, so Plantation and Ferrand Cognac, we're working with 7 different suppliers. Why? Because each one is going to have its specific taste. So it allows us to play like a painter again with different colors, with a different style of toasting, with a different style of aging from each barrel maker. Some of them are going to make a stronger toasting, some of them are going to use a very specific type of oak, some of them are going to age their barrels differently before assembling it. So it's going to be each one with his personal taste. That's very important. And France and the USA, obviously, is completely different culture in terms of cooperation. So we're going to go now to our fourth blue elephant. We're going to talk about the influence of the previous film. So that's something that is very, very à la mode, like because if you age it in a barrel that previously contained something sweet, like cherry, like malt, you can add natural sweetness to your spirit. That's why the whiskey producers that are very proud of not putting sugars, adding sugar to the spirit, are using a lot of sherry cask or podcast because it allows to touch the consumer that like some of sweet taste. And actually, some whiskey producers are using barrels that still have what they call wet barrels, barrels that still contain some of the previous fillings. So it can go up to 7%. So if you have a 200 liters barrel, you can have 14 liters of sherry in your whiskey. Yeah, that's funny. I lost the toe in my whiskey fan is not here anymore. So what's the idea with this previous filling? The idea is to find the perfect match for your spirit, for it to be complemented and to make it better. The idea is not to hide the taste of your spirit that you're putting into this barrel. The idea is to elevate even more and to complexify the spirit that you're putting into this barrel. So for instance, what you're tasting right now, it's the Ferrand Cognac barrel. I don't know if the bottle is around. It's in the back. So what's this product? It's something that, from what I know, hasn't been done in many years. It's very traditional, but it was lost, and it's something we recreate. As I told you, we are historically a cognac producers, so grape-based spirits from southwest of France, one of the oldest spirits in the history of spirit making. And this is a cognac that we age in Jamaican rum casks. So we took the cognac from our wines in Cognac from 2011. That's a bottle that is arriving right now. And what did we do with this cognac? We put it to mature for 1 year in a Jamaican rum cask. So you're going to have the complementation of the different flavors from the two different casks. The cognac is going to be this green character, taste of fresh grapes, some leather taste because it's quite old. You're going to get some nutty notes. And then the Jamaican barrel is going to bring all the exotic fruit that you're getting, the ripe bananas, the pineapple, all of this is coming. And all this is going to bring more complexity to the blend and create something very different. So that's a specific spirit. We call this range renegade. Why? Because we are considered a bit like the renegades of cognac because we are doing things a bit out of the line, and cognac is a very, very conservative denomination. So we cannot do what we want. And actually, in the geographical indication for cognac, you cannot age the cognac in barrels that has contained another spirit before. So this actually is 100% cognac that I cannot call cognac. It's eau de vie de vin, which is grain-based spirit very much. But it's 100% cognac. I'm saying it again. I hope nobody from the geographical indication is here. I'm going to go to jail. So I don't know if you tasting it, if you can find the notes of grape, the notes of winey character, and also the notes of exotic fruit, the notes coming from the rock, and those two are complementing each other. So another blue elephant that I wanted to show you is something also very, very specific. We've got a program that we call Single Cask Maison Ferrand. It's a program, generally speaking, what we do is what we do like with the XO. We age first in the country of origin, so mostly the Caribbean or rums, in a bourbon barrels, American oak. Then we ship these barrels by boat to France to Cognac, and we age it again in our Cognac cask, in our Cognac barrels. With this program, we do a third maturation in a barrel that is a bit extraordinary, so something completely different. So for instance, what you're having right now is a rum from Guyana. So in Guyana, there is a beautiful distillery called Demerara Distillers, Diamond Distillers, which is quite famous about these wooden stills. They are the only distillery in the world to have wooden pot stills. And we choose to make an exchange with those guys at the Baguette here because Steve Olson, who collaborated with Alexandre to make a mezcal finish, mezcal maturation with the Guyana. Why did we decide to do that? about aging is the influence of the climate. So you can see here two very different climates, and you can imagine if I put my barrel on a beach or in the snow like in the second image, it's going to be very different. For instance, I don't know if you guys know there, but so I recognize this distillery, it's Ballu distillery, so it's owned by Citadelle. It's in the middle, it's in the north actually of the Highlands in Scotland. It's one of the coldest distilleries in the world. It's under the snow a lot of months during the year. So if you age around here, or if you go there, this distillery, probably some of you guys know it. It's West Indies Distillery in Barbados. It's a distillery breed that we own, where we do this, we create this XO rum, and it's literally directly on the beach. And actually, just below the distillery, you've got the neighborhood where was born the main character of Barbados, who is, you know, the main character in Barbados, main personality. Rihanna is from Barbados, and she's actually coming from a neighborhood just behind the distillery. So if you go to Ballu or if you go to West Indies Rum Distillery, your aging is going to be completely different. We're going to go a little bit technical for the last time today. That's a bit the difference between what we observe between the aging in the Caribbean and the aging in cognac in a continental climate. So everything that you have in orange is the tropical climate, everything that you have in blue is a continental climate. So there are many different impacts that you can have on your spirit. First, so the differences of weather. First of all, you've got the cellar temperatures. If you are in the tropics, here it's 25 degrees. You can see that most of the time the temperature inside the cellar, you have much more temperature difference in the continental aging, and this creates what we call the tranchage, which is this variation of the temperature is going to make the spirit move into the barrel, because when it's colder it retracts, when it's hotter it expands. So this is going to help extract a lot more elements from your barrel, because your spirit is going to be movement inside. That doesn't happen in the Caribbean. But then the angel share, obviously the evaporation is higher, so you're going to concentrate more on the Caribbean. And as it's more humid in the Caribbean, what evaporates from the cask is more alcohol and less water, because the environment around the cask is already saturated with water. So the profile of your rum is going to be rounder. And just last 1 minute, because there's someone who wants to speak behind me. We talked only about aging in barrels here, but I mean, it's only maybe 1% of the possibilities that we have in terms of aging, and most people don't explore it. But there are very, very ancient techniques that we are trying a bit to rejuvenate. Like for instance, you've got the beautiful man opening here a terracotta egg where you can do the aging. That's a wine technique. That's an Italian company that is making this kind of eggs for wine. And it's another technique for aging, because again, it's a porous material, so you've got this whole phenomena of aging is happening, but you don't get all the tannic elements or the harsh element from the wood or the vanilla. So your aging is very, very slow. It's a bit like a wine in a bottle with a cork. It's very, very slow, but it's still mutating all the elements inside of the spirit. And that's something we're just starting to understand, and that's a bit the new frontiers of what we could do. I've got here a sample of rum aged in clay cask that we